everyone's just going to introduce themselves quickly. I know their names are up behind us, just with their name, company, and the most important question of the day, if you're buying me a drink, I'll have. So I'll start with you first, Tara.
So Tara Colpitz, and I'm Senior Director at Expedia Group, just down the street. And I was really feeling some summer need, some heat, so I'm going to say a gin gimlet. So.
Great drink.
Richard Clark, so I'm very much the imposter here. So I work in the finance industry, not the hotel industry, but I work on the sell-side research firm called Bernstein, and I cover the global hotel companies, online travel companies, and cruise. And I live in Kent, so I'll be sort of patriotic and either say a pint of some Chepenier or a glass of a sparkling Chapeldown wine.
Nice. Marilee.
I'm Marilee Carr. I'm the CEO and founder of Under the Doormat Group, and we do everything in short-term and flexible rentals, from operations to Hospira technology, through to distribution and corporate, and hoping to make every property a property which can be used to its full potential. And if I'm thinking about a drink, Sipsmiths has a great cocktail book, and my favorite one in there is the Bee's Knees.
Lovely, thank you. Just to beat that.
It's going to be tough, because I've got that book and there are 100 cocktails in it, so to know them all would be all hard. So Tristan Gadsby, CEO of Alliance. We're a guest experience platform, so we're very lucky to work with a lot of luxury brands, one of which is Raffles. So I'm going to have to say the London Sling. So if you haven't had one, it's just down the road. They are absolutely fantastic, if not slightly expensive, but I do thoroughly recommend.
Amazing, worth the cost. Worth the cost. Well, Richard, kick us off. You're just off the back of Marriott results, I think, a couple of hours ago, and you look across many things, including, of course, the whole hotel industry. What do you think hotels are afraid of this year?
Well, as I say, I'm the imposter, so I'm doing this from a sort of outside looking in scenario, but I think it's very much that, in general, the lodging space is in a good place. You know, I think there's a view that demand looks pretty good. You know, there's still some recovery out there if you find it in some corners of the world, but people want to spend money. No one wants to be the richest person in the graveyard anymore, so there's like robust demand out there, very limited supply on a sort of global basis. And consolidation drivers. You know, the industry continues to consolidate, and that sort of with it kind of finds efficiency. So what are they afraid of? I suppose any interruption to that, and probably the two things that maybe we've seen today, because if anyone is a follower of the stock market, TUI shares are down 10, Marriott shares are down 5, is either one, some interruption to that demand, any sign, you know, demand is slowing, the macro is weakening, people are wanting to spend less money on travel, and then I think secondly is discipline. You know, I think that the industry is disciplined. It's you know, it's a fixed asset. You don't have this oversupply that comes in. There's no tariff angle. And I think if the industry sort of says, oh, actually, let's just throw money at the problem and cut our fees, or then that could be an issue. And one of the comments from Marriott today is they're talking up an increase in key money for like mid-scale hotels. Now, that might be great news for some people in the audience, but I think from a stock market perspective, it's maybe seen as a little bit of a lack of discipline and, you know, a change to the structure.
Thank you. And Tara, you know, you're at one of the world's biggest OTAs. You're seeing people distribute a lot of different assets online. How does the hotel really get the attention of the traveler?
Yeah, I think we're in an industry that's never been so dynamic or complex. And I think really from a standpoint of how you can stand out at this point, I'd focus attention on 3 key drivers. 1, trust. 2, being able to make sure you understand who your target audience is. And 3, how do you reach them where they are? And so from a trust standpoint, we know that 62% of consumers will actually pay more for the same product through a brand or a forum that they trust. And so I think really being able to build that trust can be being able to tap into different loyalty programs, using strategic partnerships to be able to really follow where trust already exists. I think as well, the traveler wants their journey to their path to purchase to be simple. They don't want to be confused when they're shopping, and so really making sure that price is consistent across all of the different channels. And that's why Expedia Group has developed optimized distribution to be able to help hotels to be able to control their sell price. Now, how do you make sure that you understand who your traveler is and that you're showing up where they are looking? 3 in 5 travelers actually don't have a destination in mind at this point of where they want to go when they're beginning their trip-making journey. And you think of White Lotus. White Lotus is something that we're really keeping a close eye on from a standpoint of season 3 was announced to be based in Thailand, and we saw a spike for Thailand searches by 50%. Wow. So streaming, TikTok, social media is really where this generation is focused to be able to find their inspiration. And so how are you using those channels? And so we recently developed and announced our travel shops at Expedia Group just last year. And travel shops are a way of in-app marketplace through social to be able to curate a journey based on tastemakers or brands or different icons and influencers. And so if you're an Arsenal FC fan, I don't want to get contentious, but if you follow them, then you would be able to have a curated understanding of where some of their accommodation recommendations and to be able to follow that.
That's very cool, thank you. I'm a Southamptons fan, just by locality.
Cautiously.
I know, apologise in advance. Merrill, you were talking about innovation, and I believe you and Tristan did something very innovative last year by bringing together the best of hotel CRM tech and short-term rentals technology to launch One Living. Can you tell us a bit about this and you know, what's the distribution play there?
Yeah, well, look, I think what we're seeing is a kind of spectrum across hotels through to short-term rentals. And very simply, you know, on the one end of the spectrum, you have a hotel building. You then have also apart hotels, serviced apartments, branded residences. You've got professionally managed short-term rentals in residential institutional real estate through to your typical Airbnb stuff on the other end of the spectrum. And I think what we're seeing is everywhere in the middle, there's a huge amount of growth, particularly as regulation tightens and everything else, mainly because consumers want that diversity of product. And so what you see is smart hotel investors are actually diversifying the products that they're investing into. And what I love, I think there's a session later on branded residences, is how they're getting smart and, for example, selling to branded residence owners and using that money to fund the development of hotels. And so you see a lot of movement in all of these areas. And so, you know, Tris and I actually met at a conference like this a couple of years ago. And what we were seeing was that convergence happening. And by bringing together the PMS technology that we built, Hosperia, with the amazing technology that they've built for the end consumer, it actually allows all of those segments of the market to access the technology that will get them the guests that are looking for them in different platforms, and then help the owners to manage it and to ensure that there's a consistent message to consumers. So I think that's exciting because till now, I don't believe we've seen that convergence across hotels and short-term rentals. And I think by taking best-in-class technology across the two industries, we're essentially handing the tools to people who want to diversify their product to help them do that at scale, better, and more effectively. And that's how it all started.
Thank you. I mean, Tristan, it feels like I should ask you, was that how it started for you too?
As far as I remember.
Yeah, over a sleep.
No, absolutely. And I think, you know, we are seeing, look at what's happened in New York, and I think, Richard, you're going to know this probably way better than me, actually. There's a real lack of stock in that market because, you know, of the regulation and Airbnb not being allowed in an unmanaged fashion, so it's not that it isn't allowed. What it's doing is putting pressure on individuals to basically institutionalize their Airbnb offerings. So you've got asset classes now sprouting up that are particularly focused around that short-term rental opportunity. You've also got pressure on multi-family owners. They've got pressure to make their revenues, and we're also seeing pressure on renters to pay. So they need access to more revenue opportunities. So when you're not using your apartment over the weekend, why not distribute that if you have the license, the appropriate license, distribute it on a short-term rental platform. So there's a massive convergence on that side. Then when you look at hotels, and I think Merrilee hit on this really well, is that branded residences are a part of the landscape now and are increasingly so. They're being used by a lot of developers, many in this room, to actually fund the overall project. But they're also seeing the opportunity, and Dubai's been probably one of the first to do this, where they're seeing quite a lot of that inventory actually kept to one side for leases, for long-term leases, but ultimately will also be short-term rentals. So you're getting these distinct asset classes starting to merge, and therefore the need really to find the best way to distribute each product, as you said, finding, I think Tara, you said about, finding the right audience for the product. Each platform, has a very different type of audience, and using the technology to help you do that is going to be an important part of the equation.
Yes, thank you. And I know the next panel is a kind of deep dive on branded residences, so this leads in really, really well. Tell us a bit about you, Tristan. Of course, you have this platform which is helping deliver exceptional experiences for guests. I know we spoke a bit earlier about experiences, but how does that really help hotels with their distribution? And I suppose leading on from that, does loyalty kill distribution? If you're so good with your guests and they're coming back to you each time, do you need a broader distribution strategy?
I think every hotel company in the world would love that to be true, but sadly, Tara, you're okay. It's not going to happen. Yes, repeat business is obviously really key.
Yes.
And we see a direct correlation between delivering a great experience, and increasingly we see all the trends, looking at travelers wanting an experience. We also see experience spending growing far in advance of any of the other spend. So it's growing at over 60%, whereas as you've seen from some of the analyst calls, room revenue is not growing anywhere near that at the moment. So there is an opportunity, to do that. So we typically take over once a booking has been made, and we help brands, and we're very dominant in the luxury space, really help them deliver great experiences, whether that's helping them communicate with their guests, whether that's helping them arrange concierge-like experiences, and pulling that together into something that truly drives ultimately guest satisfaction. So we typically see scores going up 10+%. Wow. And there is a direct correlation between that and then repeat business. So it's going to move the dial, but it's never going to replace, the distribution channels that exist today. But that business is there to be won, and pretty much every hotel brand does have a metric around, direct distribution, and I think that will continue. It's just getting tougher and tougher, particularly when you're starting to list alongside short-term rentals. So you see mixed inventory going into a lot of these platforms these days. Personally, I don't like that. I'm either looking for one or the other, but it's there.
Yes.
So.
Thank you. Well, Tara, a big part of Expedia's business is the B2B segment. I think we saw this come across very strongly in your results last week.
Yep.
I know you've done something cool with Microsoft. Tell us about this, and what should we be thinking about in terms of our B2B distribution for hotels?
Yeah, so I'll actually start with what we should be thinking about from a B2B distribution standpoint. And I think from a loyalty perspective, it's where I've got my eyes. But I think we have to think about loyalty in a different way. There's very strong demand for loyalty programs, and we know that the gross profit of a member of a loyalty program is 2.5x of a non-member. Now, I think the way that we've thought about loyalty in past has really shifted. We've got in B2B distribution for Expedia Group, we're fueling over 100 million room nights annually in different strategic partnerships. And we do so with our white label template as well as rapid API. So depending on how that loyalty program, that company is wanting to interface and engage with their members as well as our supply partners. Now, this is where every every single industry is entering the travel sector. Every person wants to, Marilee and I were talking about before, people want to be rewarded by travel, which is wonderful. As an industry, we want to encourage that. And so Microsoft Bing partnership is one that we announced last year, and it really does show as an example of such a strategic partnership. Essentially, it's first of its kind collaboration where we are working with Microsoft Bing to service their rewards members through our Rapid API technology. And so if you're booking travel through Microsoft Bing Rewards, then you would be rewarded on their program as well as our Expedia Group branded programs as well, including our OneKey in US and UK point of sale.
Thank you. It's a huge amount of innovation. And Richard, I'll kind of come to you with that. You know, people are distributing a lot of different travel products online. We're also seeing, of course, the growth of AI and social media, and Tara's touched on that, and people being inspired by that. How much do you think AI and social media is going to really kind of upend these kind of distribution strategies that we're hearing about?
Yeah, I mean, it's always the cliche, isn't it? We overestimate the impact in a year and we underestimate it in 10 years, and that's definitely going to be the case here. And I think, you know, when I'm out there talking to people, I think there's two maybe challenges I'd make against what I see as the biggest pushback. One is, does the best product win? Probably not most of the time. You know, is it better to go and book your hotel through the OpenAI system or Expedia? Probably today, still very much Expedia. Does that matter? Possibly not. If everyone is starting their journey at Google and they're directing us to an AI product, you know, we're going to use it. You know, we're not fully in control as the consumer. I think the second factor around travel is there's maybe this slight thought that everyone says that travel is this very considered purchase and, you know, we're never just going to let an agent go and book it for us. There's definitely that side to travel. There is a commoditized side to travel. And the very fact that, you know, Booking and Expedia to some extent can charge more to be just at the top of a list shows that some people just want to book a functionary hotel, you know, that just fulfills the bed, shower, and no cockroaches kind of criteria. And AI will do that, you know, and they'll very simply say, okay, you can go and book this hotel. So I think we underestimate it at our peril, and they say the top of the funnel companies are very powerful. There are protections. You mentioned trust. That's extremely important. You know, you only need one time you think you've booked a hotel in Dublin, Ireland, and it's booked your hotel in Dublin, Ohio, and you're never going to use it again, right? Or you're not for a couple of years. And then loyalty. It's difficult to work out how they can sort of fill, you know, that gap around status, loyalty. We'll see, but there are protections that mean I don't think every customer will use it, but it's definitely going to have a big influence, I think, on distribution, and everyone's just going to have to get on board with it.
Fair enough, thank you. Marilee, you of course, you are in short-term rentals and been 10 years in that space. What should the hotel investors be looking out for with short-term rentals this year? Any innovation you're doing or things coming up?
Look, I think it does come back a little bit to convergence. And I think what we see in a post-COVID world, and I mean, I think we're kind of beyond that now, but I think, you know, certainly Expedia showed that their consumers, once they tried short-term rentals, often continued to choose that. Not always at the expense of hotels, sometimes in addition to hotels or for different types of trips. And so I think it really comes back to the consumer. The consumer has tested our product, they like it, and I think we're seeing a combination of the professionalization of the sector that Tristan mentioned, as well as, in some ways, the institutionalization of it. Yep. And I think that creates huge opportunities for the hotel world as they diversify the types of product that they offer, to actually partner with us, to take technology from us, and to benefit from what we've learned in terms of what consumers are looking for and how to deliver that product at scale, alongside of the investment to do it in much bigger ways across the globe over the coming years. So I think that's incredibly exciting. I actually think back, I think it was 2017 that I spoke at IHIF, and at that stage I said, by 2025, every hotel brand will have some kind of a play in short-term rentals. And actually, we're not far off that. Not all of them are as big as maybe they could have been, But I think we are going to see over a 10-year period that shift, and I think the industries are colliding to simply be accommodation. We aren't alternative anymore. We're part of mainstream, and the more that we work together, the more opportunities are going to be created.
Thank you. Well, it would just coming to that 5 minutes time. I'm just going to ask the panel just for one thing they're keeping their eye on this year, and then we'll open out to Q&A. Tara, why don't you start, and I'll go logically round.
I think personalization. I think it's a buzz, but also I think just understanding how Gen AI really fits into that.
Thank you.
I think from my perspective, maybe consolidation. I mean, I could say technology, but I'll just be repeating what I said earlier. So I'll say consolidation. We've just seen Hyatt, in the last couple of days by Playa. I think we'll see more of that. I think there is going to be a bit more consolidation, particularly on the hotel side.
Thank you.
On my side, I think authenticity. I think being able to deliver a unique product to consumers wherever they're looking, whether that is on social, through OTAs, or whichever distribution channels you choose, and being able to display your product in ways that consumers can see what's unique about it.
Thank you.
I always hate going last because
I know.
steal all the good points of it. But actually, I totally agree on the loyalty programs. I think are a big part of why we're seeing some of that consolidation. If you live in the UK, you'll probably be outraged at British Airways right now with what they've done to their loyalty scheme. But actually, I think we're going to see changes in the hotel sector as well, particularly as we see some of those credit card revenues perhaps not hit the marks that they have in the past. So that's going to be an interesting sort of evolution. So looking at that. But looking at personalization, I think is a big thing. And to deliver personalization, actually, you need to understand a number of things. You need to understand the customer, the individual customer, not just the primary booker. And this is something that, we have debates with the OTA sector about, is being able to understand everyone that's coming and having a profile for each one of those individuals. Understanding the context to their stay. Why are they coming? What is their purpose? How long are they here? What have they already got booked? There's no point suggesting a restaurant for someone that's already got dinner booked, or there's no point suggesting, a car from the airport to someone that's driving. So really understanding the context and the itinerary of that guest, and then understanding what's in the local area. What's not just about your own hotel, but also what's around, so that you can actually then deliver. Because and I think Accor have been great champions of this, of the hotel being the hub of that local community. I think actually it's true. And, people don't come just to stay in the hotel. They come to the destination. They want to explore it. So personalization needs to understand those three things. And that's going to be the battle that people are facing, I think, this year, is to try and get all of that together into a position where they can actually use it to good effect and personalize in the right way and not make stupid, annoying suggestions, which I seem to receive in my inbox every day. And, hopefully we'll see less annoyance next year. And I guess the other one as well is maybe a focus on some slightly different metrics, and your 2.x times is exactly right. Loyal customers are much more valuable, and you can, get a much larger share of their wallet. So how do they start to think about that and really use not RevPAR, not even TrevPAR, but maybe things like, total customer lifetime value, things like that, which actually drive the longer term metrics, in the right way. So yeah, quite a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have a couple of minutes for questions, I think. Angie, were there any Q&As out there?
Question up here.
Oh, go on the left here.
Just tell us who you are, where you're from.
Hi, Ian Morris from Sec Newgate. Richard talked about the growth of experience spend, and distribution is not just about selling hotel rooms now. It's about experiences, car rentals, short-term rentals, everything in that travel mix. So for smaller or mid-sized players in the hotel industry, do they have to try to compete now to offer that broader range of travel experiences and choices? And if so, how do they do that?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
I'm happy to take it.
Go on.
I think there are plenty of partners out there that they can use to get that share, and there are plenty of ways to distribute that. Once you've got, so the pre-arrival email is generally the first point, and I think there's another point here about how people book ancillary spend as well. I think we've tried to see all the shopping cart stuff, and but actually people have got sticker shock by then. By the time they've spent $2,000 on their initial purchase, they're not interested in the extras. However, once they've forgotten that, they're 3 weeks out, you can start to really target them with those additional offerings. So I think that whole pre-arrival experience is really important to understand how you can drive those revenues. We've got plenty of examples of where we have campaigns to target certain spend categories at certain periods prior to arrival. So take something as simple as arrival transportation. In an urban destination, people typically think about that 3 to 4 days in advance. If you're going to a resort, it's actually 7 to 8. So when do you get that perfect communication to the guest? Right at the time they're thinking about it, and it's the point of need. And then it becomes a service, and you can start to really convert that revenue. But there are plenty of partners to help, pull that experience together for you.
I would.
Oh, I mean, all I was going to add is that, there's in any industry, surely there's always room for just a great product. I mean, does Ferrari need to offer 0% financing, or, Bulgari need to do a Black Friday promotion? No. Like, if you've got a great product, it will still shine through. You've got to be smart on distribution, but you don't need to do everything that every other company is doing.
I think when you consider the experience, it's, when it really hurts is when you end up in Dublin, Ohio. Is that what you said? And that's not where you intended to go. So I think, we see 70% of our travelers are actually using our chatbot feature to be able to circumnavigate some of those outcomes and experiences. So it's more so looking at how do you make sure you're fostering the entirety of the experience, not just when it's for the best and when you're adding different elements to the trip, but also when you're trying to ensure that it doesn't go terribly awry.
Thank you. Any other final questions?
I'm going to jump in with the final one then. Just a sort of general one about AI. So writing about the last 20, 30 years, looking at every wave of technical innovation we've had in the industry in terms of distribution, it's often sold as favouring the smaller business, and it's a way for them to fight back against the bigger business. But my observation is it's the total reverse. Every time it's come in, what we've seen is driven consolidation. I think I know what Richard's answer is going to be already, but I'd be interested across the panel in terms of what they think about AI and whether it's actually, which end does it favour, the smaller or the bigger?
Can I jump in there? I actually think that it depends is the answer. I think we all know that AI is going to be driven by content. And so you can either be a really small player with amazing content that cuts through, or you can be a large player that has a lot of content that helps to be easily discoverable. So I actually think it does all come back to understanding how AI can support your strategy for distribution. And I think that's where, for example, our Hosperia PMS, what we try and do is offer a huge amount more information in the system than what your traditional hotel system would do, so that when someone is trying to discover it, they have so much more detail about a property that those details become features and become the things that people find when they're looking for very specific things. I want a Beatty cot, I want to be 2 minutes from the tube station, I want to have a coffee machine, et cetera, et cetera. So people are gonna learn how to use AI to have all the things that make their experience what they want it to be, and it's our job to offer both the product and the information out in that world to be discoverable and therefore succeed. But you don't have to be big.
Those are the best at execution. Quite simply, it will benefit those the most. if they're organised about how they get their data, sorted out, because ultimately these things need data to run, exactly as Merrilee said. So it will benefit whoever is the most organised and can execute the best.
Richard?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you're probably right. Every sort of platform innovation we've seen over the last decade has been more gameable than it's initially suggested it was going to be. So, I think, Google and everything like that was meant to be the big Democrat. Even the OTAs, to some extent, probably were more gameable than maybe they originally suggested they would be. AI could be different, could be different. I think overall, though, it should enable the cream to rise to the top a little bit better. I mean, I think your point is exactly right. Like, you're not going to just kind of get frustrated and just book the top one on the list anymore. You're going to be able to narrow it down much easier to what you exactly want, in theory, and therefore kind of get the right targeted product. It should enable good hotels that haven't had maybe the distribution advantages to do better. It will mean generic hotels are going to suffer because there's not going to be anything in terms of passing trade anymore. You're just going to pick the hotel that's on your route that best suits your criteria.
I would just add, I think to Marilee's point earlier, it's about authenticity. I also think that travelers are traveling in different ways and have different choices depending on who they're going with and so forth. So it's going to take learning of AI to be able to understand, okay, who and what do they need for the type of travel that they're looking for. And that's going to take time, I would say.
Thank you. Well, a huge thank you to my panel.